Hello, and welcome to another episode of I Have No Idea What I'm Doing. This is not an instructional video, and you're probably going to be dumber for watching it. Let's go! On today's show, we're going to be repairing or replacing the coil spring pillars on a Dana 35 axle assembly. I rebuilt the differential, which I did not make a video of, and everyone with thumbs will thank me for that. Basically, I live in Michigan, and these have a little rubber ring that goes around them that the spring sits on. It does a really nice job of holding salt and water and sand, and then as the spring goes up and down, it just kind of, well, eats it to death. So I have to cut those off and weld new ones on. Now, don't mistake the fact that I don't know what I'm doing with stupidity. This is a welding mat. I don't have a welding bench, which would have a nice steel top. This is a blanket that's basically made to catch and prevent sparks from setting things on fire. In the case that it does, I have a fire extinguisher at the ready. I have gloves. I have a helmet. I don't intend to burn my eyes out or burn down the building that I'm working in. My welds might look like crap, but nobody's going to die. One more point of safety that I should mention that I did not observe is this axle assembly is really heavy. Unfortunately, right now it's not full of fluid. It has all of the hardware removed from it. The axles are out. That helps. But I really should have had someone help me with this. If you destroy your spine, it's kind of forever. Get a friend. If you don't have any friends, slip a $5 to a homeless guy or something. Okay, for cutting these off, I'm going to be using my DeWalt angle grinder with a cutting wheel. So I'm not doing any cobbling. I'm not trying to do it with a chisel or a hacksaw or some other messed up thing. This is a very efficient, precise tool. And safety gloves and safety glasses, because bits fly around and you're going to want things like your opposable thumb and your ocular cavity. Alright, well, I didn't go too bad. I didn't set myself on fire or burn down the building, and I did manage to cut the posts off. They're kind of ugly looking at the moment. I'm going to have to grind them down with a grinding wheel. The metal at the base was still pretty solid, although obviously at least half of this cone that was here was just gone. I mean, it was going to break off sooner or later, and if that happened and a spring fell out, it could bounce around under the vehicle and puncture pans and, kill an old lady behind me and a bunch of other things that I don't want to happen. So the metal at the base, again, was still fairly thick, but where it was rusty, it was not. And that was just going to come off. I love the smell of my shirt burning in the morning. As you can see, this is actually hollow inside. This pillar was just sort of molded up out of this. So what I'm going to have to do is create a base. This will be cleaned off so there's no rust and it's nice and smooth. And then I'm going to have to cut a piece of metal to act as a base to weld the new pillars onto. Okay, I got these pillars from Iron Rock Off-Road. They make them and sell them. I think it was about $40 for a pair. And that shows you just how common this problem is of these rusting off, that there's a company making just that piece to weld on. I'm going to cut a circle, or I don't know, maybe an octagon, it doesn't really matter how pretty it is, but out of this plate. That's going to get welded down, and then that will get welded on there, and then everything will get rust encapsulated and painted, and Bob's my uncle. Coffee, take 2. Ah, that's much better when you don't choke on it. Okay, I now have both pillars cut off and ground down. Choked on my coffee. I'm going to, I think it's called a paddle wheel. It's a sanding disc type thing for this, and make this all nice and smooth. And then I'm going to have to cut out some bases. Crap. Okay, we are shining like diamonds. Now it's time to cut out a base and do some practice welding and then do some real welding. Incidentally, I've used 3 different discs on this for this. When you do that, unplug it, because it's easier than you think to flip that switch. Even though it's a safety switch, it's still pretty easy to do it while you're holding it in your hand and holding a tool to loosen that. And your fingers are often right there. Don't do that. Okay, it isn't the prettiest thing in the world. I decided to go with an octagon instead of trying to cut a circle because I don't really have the tools to do that well. I could have made a whole bunch of little cuts in here and then eventually gone around and then ground it smooth. And at the end of the day, nobody's ever going to see this. It needs to be structurally sound and stay there. If this was something cosmetic, I'd take a little more time with it, but because it's not, I just want to make sure that it's never ever going to move again. And in reality, this is going to end up being way stronger than the factory pillar. Okay, I have the 2 pillar bases cut and their sides ground and polished. Now it's time for some practice welding before I do the real welding. Okay, these may not be the most professional looking welds, but they're solid and they're not going anywhere. I think I could probably jack the entire Jeep up on this plate and it's not going to go anywhere now. Now it's time for the pillars. And voila! Instant pillar. I need to clean up the spatter. Little bits all over the place, and then I'll clean up the metal and paint it. And then I get to rip the front end of my Jeep off to put this on, which will be 10 balls of fun. Well, I still have to rust encapsulate it and paint it, but there it is with the coil spring insulator on it. Everything fits quite nicely, and I don't think that's ever coming off again. And there she is. The rust encapsulator is still drying. It smells great in here. My propane heater ran out of propane, so it started to get cold, so it'll probably take even longer for the encapsulator to cure. But tomorrow, I should be able to start putting all of that on. Until next time, don't do anything stupid. Wear your goggles.